Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. I have some wonderful readings from Quo. Check out my previous episode where I read some channelings from Quo. Quo is supposedly a member of the confederation that is discussed in the Law of One. Check out my previous episodes on the Law of One for more information about it. It is a wonderful, massive, metaphysical treatise given by a higher dimensional being, and if I began to explain it all, it would take too long, really, from the stuff that we've discovered so far. I have a playlist that I would recommend. I also always recommend Aaron Abke and just reading the material yourself. And as you do, you can also read, there are two books that are available, Teaching the Law of One, Volume 1 and 2, and Jim Mccarty does a great job of reading the Law of One on Audible to get a full understanding of it. But even then, there's so much. I've listened to it, I've read it, and there's so much I still don't understand or comprehend or have put together, and there are definite passages that you listen and didn't understand the first time. So I'm still continuing to learn, and I'm most interested in the harvest or transitioning into the new earth. And I have several episodes I've discussed what those things mean. But I found some very interesting information in a speech given by Carla Rueckert and an interview given by Jim Mccarty separately, and also a channeling from Quo in a description of the process of moving into a social memory complex in the fourth density, as well as some other interesting details. The first thing I noticed in a speech that Carla Rueckert gives at the Time of Awakening conference in Mackinac Island in 2007, and she's talking about the transition in 2012 back then, which is the New Earth stuff, and she asks, what happens? What's going to happen as we move into this fourth density? And she said, well, that has been something that people have wondered about. What if we don't get all raptured away? Or what if some of us go to heaven and some of us go to hell? Any of these scenarios that we hear so much about. Well, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that what happens after 2012, according to Confederation certainty, is that we are going to enjoy the time to make restitution to this planet. And it's very important that we do this because of the number of civilizations that have come to this reform school, Earth. They've all blown up their planet or created a situation in which by radiation it was impossible to live on the planet in third density. And so we have tremendous group karma. The way to alleviate that karma is simply to, in this lifetime, begin to be stewards of the earth and stewards of each other, of users of the earth and users of each other. So I think that there's going to be a good deal of energy where people are looking at the planet not as something to use, but as something to take care of and to restore. The Quo says, many are the entities on your planet who have destroyed other planets, such as Maldek, Mars, and other planets outside your solar system. We ask that you become more and more aware that you have the opportunity at this time, within this incarnation, to turn that energy within yourself around and to become stewards, loving and wise, of whatever little acre or square foot that you may have of planet Earth. Green living, of course, is all in the news these days. The recent Live Earth concert was totally global, and it had many wonderful personalities lending their celebrity and their creative gifts to the simplest requests of people to wake up and realize what the situation really is on planet Earth. The harvest, of course, is a rough transition this time, much rougher than it has ever been before. The Confederation has never seen anything like this. There are people all over the galaxy, not, of course, in our density, but from other galaxies who are watching this harvest with great interest because it's a completely unique experience. they've not seen this before. They've not seen 16 different planetary populations, all of whom were naughty, trying to graduate. Everyone has transgressed, and that's why we're here. So it really is a reform school, and it's amazing to watch the prejudice and the tensions between different groups flow. Because it would stand to reason that you'd have some tension if you were dealing with someone from an entirely different ethos. And different planets have different logoi, and each logos creates its own archetypal mind. So you have 16 different archetypal minds trying to blend. And people don't want to blend. So they look at someone else's way of approaching life and say, well, that's really lesser than mine. If we could only embrace all of those differences instead of judging them, we'd be far closer to graduation as a tribe. And I still have this hope that somehow there will be a global uprising of people who want to embrace each other and who want to create an atmosphere in which we graduate as a planet. The only people who are not in this category, according to the Confederation, are the 150 people from our own planet who are of the elder race and who chose to return to help their brothers. Ra said, "The fourth density is, as we have said, as regularized in its approach as the striking of the clock upon the hour. The space-time of your solar system has enabled this planetary sphere to spiral into space-time of different vibrational configuration. This causes the planetary sphere to be able to be molded by these new vibrations. Hence, the thought forms of your people during this transition period are such that the mind-body-spirit complexes of both individuals and societies are scattered throughout the spectrum instead of being able to grasp the needle and point the compass in one direction. Thus, the entry into the vibration of love or understanding is not effective within your personal, present, societal complex. The harvest shall be such that many will repeat the third density cycle. The energies of your wanderers, your teachers, and your adepts at this time are all bent upon increasing the harvest. However, there are a few to harvest. In later channelings, the Quo group has assured us that the harvesting population is growing exponentially now as people are waking up and not wanting to go back to sleep. Now they talked about your teachers, your adepts, and your wanderers. Teachers are pretty obvious. We have so many wonderful teachers in our literature and in our religions. The adepts are not too obvious to some people because they're feeling that magic is the casting of spells and manipulation of people by other people. But there is an ancient magical tradition upon this planet which is sometimes called the white magical tradition. It has grown up in the West with acknowledged uses of concepts from the East. It is not a secret society, it is not hidden on purpose, but because not too many people are interested in becoming magical, it's not very well known. But there's a brotherhood and sisterhood of adepts that has existed ever since the time of Hermes and will exist as long as there are those who are called to become disciplined and magical and able to use their power rightly and then to create ways to use this power. But the wanderers are, in many ways, the most powerful of the helpers that we have at this time. I consider myself to be a wanderer, and I think there are many millions of wanderers all over the world. Wanderers are simply those that had home planets other than Earth, and then when Earth began to enter into the last of its years of third density and have such a woeful harvest, there really were too few to help in the harvest, and they decided to come and help in the harvest. They call themselves the Brothers and Sisters of Sorrow, according to the Ra group and the Confederation in general. There are 3 generations, according to Quo, of these wanderers. I am of the first generation. I and many others like me, millions like me, came to Earth in groups from either 5th density or 6th density, the density of wisdom, and the density of unity respectively, because we wanted to risk it all. We wanted to take a gamble that we could help Earth lighten her vibration by the end date of this third density. And so we went through incarnational processes which robbed us of our memories of who we were, what our background was, and we entered into the incarnation where nothing is known. And we had to recapture our knowledge of who we were by faith alone. And so a lot of wanderers have not yet awakened because they have gotten so disgusted by Earth that all they want to do is leave it. They don't want to wake up and engage with it. They don't want to love it. They don't want to help it. They just want out. And here's a call to any wanderer listening who feels that way. Get a grip. It's time to realize who you are and to realize that you came here for such positive, such high-minded things. And it's time to be about your business. It's time to fulfill your mission. It's time to love everybody and let everybody love you. There's a saying in the South, I want y'all to love on each other. Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. Love on each other and let people love on you. You're worth it. You really are. You can take love. You can take compliments. I think it's almost harder to accept love of an unconditional nature than it is to give it. So practice love. The second generation of wanderers is, I would say, typified by the me generation, although there were second generation wanderers before that, and there are second generation wanderers after that. But those were attracted to Earth not simply for high-minded helping others, and damn the torpedoes. It was more calculated. It was like, in third density I can get more rebalancing of my wisdom and love, or my love and my power, or whatever in this boot camp than I could in 1,000 years of incarnation in this higher density. So I want to come down to third density again, enter the boot camp and see if I can get myself in better fettle. Certainly they want to be of service to others. Higher densities always do. However, their consideration is to work on themselves. So you'll see a good many self-involved people who are very high vibration and who don't yet seem to be very unselfish. And that is because they are having trouble breaking that me circle of personality and getting a wider picture where it's we instead of me. These wanderers constitute a significant amount of the population of wanderers. The third generation of wanderers we have are something called the indigo children or crystal children. The basic situation with crystal children or indigos is that they have graduated. They've made it through graduation already. They've already died, made graduation, and gone on to fourth density after an incarnational healing period. And having cleared that healing period and having been freed of any adhering karma, they now ask themselves, so what do I want to do next? And they answer themselves to a man and a woman, so I understand, by saying that as the elder race did, all 150 of them who graduated in the first wave of the first minor cycle, by realizing that they want to come back because they have brothers and sisters here on Earth, and they want to bring them with them so we can all graduate. So the crystal children are motivated very much towards problem solving, troubleshooting, busting systems that don't work, and in general starting novel ways of dealing with problems and seeing things in a wider perspective. It's kind of upsetting to many parents who are dealing with these wanderer children. They don't seem to behave properly. They don't obey unless it makes sense to them. And I say to all crystal children parents out there, don't tell them what to do. Ask them for help. Don't be authorities over them, but identify with their situation and explain to them what it is you need. For instance, don't tell them, do this or I will be angry. Tell them, Mommy needs a rest. I need a break and I need you to do this to help me. Will you please do that? The difference between those two ways of dealing with your needs and the child's needs is amazing. I think that the third generation of wonders is being extremely effective already. I recently wrote an article for UPI on one particular crystal child from Canada, Rueckert, who found out at the age of 7 that people in Africa were dying for want of water. So he decided to raise what he thought was $2,000, the cost of a new well. And he mowed lawns and he washed windows and he did errands, he earned money and he got his well. But then he found out that $2,000 wasn't the actual price tag. It was actually much more than that, like $7,000. So he said, okay, I'll just keep on doing my chores. But by this time he had enough publicity that hundreds and thousands of people were giving donations to Ryan's Well Fund. So he created the Ryan's Well Foundation, and to date they have put in hundreds of wells all over Africa, starting from the efforts of this little child. He is now 16. And what does he want to do? He wants to get his degrees and his credentials so he can go to Africa. And his goal is to make sure there is no African child without water. And you know, I have a feeling he's going to do it. Do you come from Mars? Do you come from Maldek? Do you come from Deneb? Were you in Mu? Were you in Atlantis? Where are you in this? You all are in the same place with me. You are the ambassadors for light on planet Earth, if you choose to be. We're all one tribe. It doesn't matter whence we came. When we went through the incarnational process and were born into this valley of the shadow, we became a member of the tribe of planet Earth. We are human, and we together are a tremendous force for the good. So I would suggest to everyone that we begin thinking about how to be secret agents, because you can't simply go about trying to proselytize unconditional love. You can't convert people. People convert themselves. What you have to do is live in such a way that people come to you and say, "How are you doing that? What's your secret?" Or in any way asking you to open your heart and asking you to talk to them freely and openly. And in this way, you can continue communicating and dropping seeds. You don't have to be heavy-handed about this. You never push your ideas on people if you want to be a secret agent. That would blow your game, wouldn't it? What you want to do is be like Johnny Appleseed of thoughts and look for the opening, look for the possibility of a communication, an energy exchange between you and another person, where you're not over and above them telling them what to do. You're saying, well, that's really an interesting thought. You know, I had that thought. And when I've had that thought, my reaction has been to, and then you give them the seed thought, to give love, to give light, to be compassionate, to forgive yourself. There are so many ways to talk about unconditional love. And I hope that you will be agents for the unconditional love and do random acts of kindness and be very happy with yourself. Because as you put that radiant light out there, as you become a beacon and a lighthouse, letting the light shine through you, you are changing the world. Work on yourself equals work on the world. There's an intermission, and then the host speaks, and they ask a question about Mars. And Carla then says, the Raw group talked about Mars. This is a wild story. One of the guardians of Earth, a member of the confederation whom we know by the name Yahweh, the Jehovah of Moses and Aaron, and all those people in the Old Testament, knew that Mars had totaled itself. They had rescued the souls from the planetary annihilation, and they kept the soul energy together so that they were all viable, healthy at the soul level. They waited until Earth began its third density period, and they decided they would put the Martian souls into bodies. Well, the great ape body was available, and it was progressing according to the typical natural timeline, where gradually the bodies were beginning to stand upright and beginning to lose their body hair. They were gradually beginning to be more conscious of being in tribes and being in clans and helping each other. And Yahweh thought, well, this is really a clumsy physical vehicle. I think we're going to tweak it a bit. And so they made genetic changes in the genome and created an upright, hairless ape. We're still great apes. 95% of our DNA is in common with the great apes, but our jaw moves so that we can talk better. We are able to stand upright so that we can walk better. We form opposable thumbs that work better. And they goosed our brain power as well. Those of us who came from Mars. I don't think I did, but I might be in a physical vehicle that was designed at that time. A great many of those on Earth were. As a matter of fact, it's possible that all of them were, because the Martian experiment, which was considered a failure by the Confederation of Planets, was very effective in populating the new species, or a new subspecies anyway. So Yahweh's thoughts were with the larger brain and the enhanced physical abilities. They would be more able to follow the law of one. They would be more able to love each other and make good decisions and so forth. What they didn't reckon with was that if you have a brand new third density person with enhanced brain power, but with no life experience in third density, the patterns of late second density will rule to begin with. Well, what are the late patterns in second density apes? Not a love of family, but a sense of family, so that the people in your clan are totally embraced by you, and you always think in terms of helping the clan and gathering resources so that the clan doesn't go hungry in winter, and if the clan is threatened in some way, aggression. Those were patterns we brought with us from the great ape mind, the mindset, and this is still the mindset of our leaders. We haven't budged off of defending the clan, protecting the clan, gathering resources for the clan, and repelling borders. So what happened was that it became very easy for us to approach a challenging situation with aggression to defend the clan, preserve resources, and so forth. So that felt right, and throughout history we never really have been able to shake the habit, responding instinctively with aggression, even though it's such old energy that everybody's tired of. Nobody really wants to live in a time of aggression and war. Nobody that you talk to on the street says, oh yeah, this was the way it should be. But still, that is our planetary way of looking at things. The traditional planetary view says that it's okay to aggress against other people. It's okay to kill people if it's necessary in order to defend the clan. And so you keep redefining the clan so that you can make policy by aggression, which is something the United States still has a settled habit of doing. But we now have the influx from Maldek to consider. That's a big, amazing story also in the raw material, where Maldek was a planet in the solar system that is now the belt of asteroids, the asteroid belt. They blew themselves up. So unfortunately, when a planet does that, the karma is planetary. Even though maybe only the rulers did that, and the people didn't have a lot to do with it, still, when the entire planet is destroyed, there is a planetary karma. This happened about 300,000 years ago, according to Ra, but there wasn't a third density planet around that was starting its cycle then, so they waited for Earth because of the fact that they had formed themselves into what Ra had called a knot of fear. They had to take over 200,000 years just untangling the knot so that they could retrieve each soul as a soul identity of its own instead of one complete quivering jelly full of fear. So they untangled the knot of fear, and in order to deal with the heavy karma of this, they allowed these particular entities to enter Bigfoot-type bodies, which we had naturally at the end of the second density, and they placed them in subterranean caves where they lived out their lives until they became able to accept that they were people and therefore could graduate to begin third density. As I understand it now, all of those caves are cleared of these Bigfoot. In another interview with Jim Mccarty, who was the scribe of the Law of One sessions. Check out my interview with Jim. This was on a show called Lost Knowledge on October 8th, 2013. And the questioner asks, one of the main things that Ra talked about is that the harvest time is now, and not meaning like right this minute or right this year, but it's part of our choice of destiny of experiences. Some people don't like the word harvest. They prefer graduation or ascension, whatever you want to call it. I think the graduation word is nice, but if the harvest is now and we're all trying to understand and figure out at our personal level or soul level just what that means, Ra's advice had a lot to do with love, right? Jim says, Ra's advice had everything to do with love. Our ability to love and to open ourselves to at least 51% of the time in everything we think, do, and say is the ticket to fourth density. Being able to love people unconditionally is the key. And Ra said the harvest is actually now. It started shortly after World War II and will go on for some period of time. Everybody who is going through what we call the death process now has the steps of light provided them. They walk those steps of light until the light becomes too glaring, and then they step aside and look where they are. And if they are in third density, they return to third density. And if they are in fourth, then they are harvested and would probably decide to come back to planet Earth and help others do the same thing. In fact, that's why we have so many of these kids who are not only wanderers, but people who have graduated from planet Earth already and are coming back to help out with the harvest because they want to be of service to others. And being of service to others and loving others is what gets you there. So when you experience fourth density, she asked, for those people who are alive right now on planet Earth, can they go into fourth density without natural death? Jim Mccarty says certain people in meditative states can have those types of experiences, but they are not sustainable until you go through the doors of what we call death, which Carla calls the doors of larger life. The questioner asks, so when that happens, you reincarnate into fourth density. Are the people or children who are incarnating right now in fourth density, does that feel different? Are you more of a light body? Jim says, we are in a different body. The body that's concerned with the heart, and that's the green ray. That body has a great deal more freedom, a great deal more light available to it. And Ra suggested that the entities that will inhabit planet Earth after the harvest is complete, this will be a fourth density positive planet, and that it will take some period of time for those entities to accustom themselves to the planet and to working together as one entity, so that third density for a short period of what we would call time will be put aside, in that there will not be another third density Earth for a while, for as long as it takes for the fourth density population to learn how to become invisible to third density, because if they are visible, it would be an infringement upon the third density free will. So eventually this will be a third, fourth density planet, and there will be a fourth density population here working with the third density without the third density really knowing it for quite some time. So almost like a parallel universe. Jim says, yes, right now we have ascended masters and angels and guides and so forth that we can't see with our physical eyes, usually, but they are here. And there are various interactions of a helpful nature going on right now. And then in fourth density, the questioner asks, do we still have to worry about things like food intake and the daily experiences we have now? I heard that we don't. Jim says it's not a worry. What we apparently do is use the area of the brain called the frontal lobes to create what we need. The construction of things is done mentally. The growing and preparing of our food is done mentally, and the sharing of the food is important because it's done in a group nature, and it helps to foster the group feeling of solidarity and unity in working together. It's more of a pleasure and a joy than having to get food together tonight because I have all these people to feed. Right. Not as rudimentary. It sounds exciting and sounds like the evolution. I know that Ra expressed there would be some discomfort as we emerge into this next density. Is that what we're experiencing right now? What would we call discomfort? Jim says, well, Ra calls it inconveniences, which he said have begun. He was referring to wars, tornadoes, earthquakes, typhoons, disease, various ways that the planet needs to use to heal itself to slowly release the energy of aggression that's been built up for so long, and people themselves and groups and nations having to work together to overcome difficulties. These inconveniences could be seen as just as that, or ways for people to get together to help each other in love and light. So essentially, the souls that are not ready to graduate, the less than 51%, will experience the polarity longer, and those others will emerge into this fourth density. Right. They'll go to another third density planet and have another 75,000 years to give it another go. Right. And then once we get into fourth density, we are in the density of love, right? Right. And then we work on that for how long? Apparently for only 30 million years, Jim says. So in another channeling done on October 6th, 2018, this is post 2012, this is after Carla's death, and Jim is channeling Quo. The session begins by saying, I am Quo and am with this instrument, which offers itself as a channel this afternoon for our words, which we offer to you in the hopes that we may find inspiration upon your spiritual path. For it is our great desire to walk with you upon this path, for this time that we are joined together in our seeking. As always, we ask a simple favor, that is, that you will take these words in which we offer to you and use them in whatever way is useful to you. If any words we speak have no use for you, we ask that you leave them behind and worry not about them. We wish only to aid you in your spiritual journey and not present any stumbling blocks upon your path. If you will do us this kind favor, then we will feel free to speak to you without hesitation. Then they ask, Quo, would you please give us an idea of the stages we might expect to see as we form a social memory complex here on Earth in fourth density? Quo says, I am Quo, and I am aware of your query, my sister. This is an interesting query, for indeed the first stage has begun. All of those who seek in the conscious fashion the one creator, without discriminating the name of such a creator, or the qualities of such a creator, or the source of such a creator, but simply realize that such a creator exists and that there is the great desire within the self to serve that creator in whatever way possible, is an entity which is making itself available for the harvest into your fourth density of love and understanding. It is important that each such conscious seeker realize that no matter how much information has been gathered to describe the nature of the Creator and its ability to express itself in each iota of the creation, that still there is little that is known about either the Creator or this journey that you are upon. For this density of choice is a density in which little is known, that there is no true understanding. There is the desire to gather information and to move forward in what is seen to be the spiritual journey, using this information as a means of describing the path that is walked and the steps that are taken, and as you have mentioned, the stages through which each passes. Thus, the beginning stage is that which is the conscious realization of the path upon which each seeker of truth now moves, as what you call transpires throughout the remainder of this third density illusion. And there is much confusion, much disharmony, much antagonism, division, and pain of a spiritual nature that is experienced by the great majority of your population. Those entities who have qualified themselves through their own seeking of truth will find further means of polarizing their consciousness more towards that which is of service to others. For there will be many instances and opportunities for serving those who are in spiritual pain, in mental distress, in physical disease, for there is much of a disharmonious atmosphere within this planetary sphere. Your Mother Earth has been severely distressed for many thousands of years by this disharmonious atmosphere and attitude, which is now culminating in the divisions between peoples, groups, countries that now express upon the third density level of experience. As time continues to move forward into the fourth density vibrations of love and understanding, there will be a decreasing population due to many factors that will allow entities to pass from this incarnation and to move through the cycle of light into the tunnel of light that measures the vibration of each entity, so that it may be determined by each entity's ability to welcome and enjoy an increasing intensity of light, whether or not this entity shall indeed move into the fourth density that is now forming upon this planetary sphere. Wars, disease, and simple old age will take their toll upon this planetary population, continuing to reduce it as time moves forward. As you are aware, there is no accurate means of determining exactly how long this time period will last until the fourth density is fully in its vibratory mode upon your planet Earth. However, there will come a time when the population has dwindled and reached its 0 point. As this time approaches, the fourth density sphere will continue to be increasing in its population, so that those entities who have been able to welcome and enjoy fourth density vibrations will find themselves upon a new Earth with new capabilities of understanding. Each entity will be able to perceive the thoughts and the feelings and the vibratory level of each other being, so that there is a beginning blending of these vibrations in a manner which reveals self to other self as self. Thus, each entity will begin to feel a kinship, shall we say, a beating of similar hearts, a walking of the same path, a seeking of the same advice to others' qualities that are existent within self. As each entity then becomes more and more aware of the circle of other entities about it, and is able to absorb these entities' conscious vibrations of selfhood, then there will become a new experience of what you call reality, or another illusion in which the light is more densely packed and reveals more information to each entity dwelling within this light-filled environment. The progress, or the stages, as you have called them, of the blending of vibrations becomes amplified, with the addition of each entity passing through that so-called tunnel of light, the vibrations of which are able to entice or draw toward it those passing from the third density illusion. As more and more entities then become aware of their new environment, there is the opening of each heart to each other heart, the opening of each mind to each other mind, the blending of the spirit, so that there is the ability to give and receive love in a fashion that is harmonious to all entities engaged in the group process. Thus, each entity brings a living library of experience with it, as it is able to find a place within the beingness of the group. Each entity, therefore, will discover that there is a greater sense of self that enlarges itself within each portion of the group energies. Thus, there is the creation of what you would call a social memory complex that has a type of identity that is much likened unto the cells of the body of the one creator, becoming conscious of the creator within each entity. Thus, this process of blending of the vibrations each entity has at its disposal, the total living bank of each memory from each entity's incarnations throughout the third density experience. Therefore, there is a time in which this blending may be completed, a time that is not measured as you measure time. This time may be seen as a kind of opening into the infinite intelligence of the one creator, so that each entity, thus offering itself into this blending, becomes aware of the nature of the one creator, not only within itself, but also within each other entity, within this newly forming circle of being, which you would call either a group mind or a social memory complex. Is there another query at this time? The questioner asks, forgiveness of self is referred to often in the messages we received from the Confederation, but it is something I struggle with. Would you please expand on this topic and help us to see the path to arrive at self-forgiveness? I am Quo, and I am aware of your query, my sister. The forgiveness of the self is that which, when accomplished, allows the self to be able to move forward unfettered by the judgment of the self by the self. All judgment may be seen in a dual fashion. Judgment of a beginning nature, shall we say, is that which recognizes qualities within the being which are not as desired by the being, for they are considered to be other than that which is harmonious. The beginning judgment of the entity recognizes disharmony, and that which offers the opportunity to grow through harmonization of that which is disharmonious within the being. This involves the conscious recognition of each portion of the disharmonious experience as being that which has within it certain qualities would allow the seeker of truth to expand its perception of itself. Thus, the ability to recognize that which needs to be balanced by its polar opposite is that which offers the concept of wholeness to the seeker of truth in perceiving the self as becoming whole. It is necessary for the seeker to see the self as that which has made what could be described as a misstep or an error, and holds this misstep or error against the self as being foolish movement, and thus increasing the judgment that began the appreciation of the nature of the supposed misstep. However, after the recognition by the self of the seeming misstep, it is necessary for the entity to realize that this misstep has not been a misstep after all, but has been a movement towards growth and the expansion of the perception of the self that requires that the self be able to accept itself as a new and risen being, shall we say a being with a new possibility-probability vortex, as a result of being able to move forward from the original position to the new position of more harmony and acceptance of the self. This acceptance of the self is another means of describing forgiveness. It is necessary for the entity to forgive itself for making what was seen to be a misstep. This forgiveness is possible as one sees that there has been a measurable growth in the awareness of the self due to the experience of the need to process the catalyst resulting from the seeming misstep. Thus, the completion of the process of learning, which can also be described as stopping of the wheel of karma, is accomplished as the self realizes that every step that is taken by the self is necessary for progress in conscious growth of the self. Thus, the forgiveness of the self is a primary part of this learning. If there has been an interaction with another self that has been a portion of this disharmonious experience of the seeker of truth, then this other self must also be forgiven, for it is truly the case that each self is the other self. Each other self is the self, so that it is necessary to forgive the self in both cases, and the other self in both entities. Therefore, there is the breaking of the inertia or the momentum that has carried the self to this point where it has been able to process the catalyst and to produce experience that is the fuel of future growth. They ask another question. It's my understanding that as the social memory complex forms, the planet becomes a part of that social memory complex and isn't just a host for it, but is an actual integral aspect of the social memory complex. Is that correct? And if so, could you talk about the relationship with the social memory complex and the planet? Quo says, I am Quo, and I am aware of your query, my brother. Again, this is a most interesting query. We hope that we may do justice to it. Your planetary sphere has itself moved through the same densities of this illusion of creation, as have each of you, beginning with the first density, moving then from that which is simple awareness of earth, wind, fire, and water, moving into the second density where there is a consciousness that expresses itself as it moves towards the light. That being the second density of beings, of the plants and the animals, who are able to experience growth and movement in the beginning of self-conscious awareness, which is that quality which allows each second density being to move within the third density realm, to become that which is the completed entity, the mind, the body, and the spirit being added in such a fashion to create a human being, as you might call them. Your Mother Earth has been central in this process of growth through the first three densities, and shall continue to be central in this movement into the fourth density of love and understanding. Thus, the process of experiencing that which is known as the consciousness of self is that which is added by the planet itself. The planet has within it the conscious awareness of each entity that has inhabited its own beingness. The planetary entity, which you call your Gaia or your Mother Earth, has throughout limitless time experienced its own consciousness and expressed it as the quality that you may see as pure awareness. The awareness of the one creator that exists in all things at all times. This awareness within your Mother Earth has gone through the same stages of growth as has each entity within your third density illusion. And as each entity moves into the fourth density, the qualities of conscious awareness have an expanded meaning within your Mother Earth, for her awareness is not just the awareness of her own beingness and her own body that may be seen quite simply as a movement of matter within time and space, but is also an awareness of each form of life upon its surface and within its beingness, as life exists at all levels of your Mother Earth. Thus, the interaction that she undertakes with you in conscious expansion of awareness is that which is a process of harmonizing its beingness with the upward spiraling line of light that moves each entity's awareness through each level of consciousness and each density of awareness. Thus, your Mother Earth moves with each of its total population of human beings and all beings of any nature, and indeed within all things, be the rock, animal, or spiritual qualities of devotion, of seeking, of inspiration, of service to others, and service to self. Thus, your Mother Earth has within her living bank of memory the experiences of all life forms that live upon her and within her, and she gives to each what you may call a very basic kind of inspiration that inspires at the cellular level, as well as all higher levels within each conscious being, and within all lower conscious and unconscious beings and substances. Thus, your Mother Earth moves in concert with its population, being one with each at a very basic level. Thus, all move together within this illusion to the next illusion of the fourth density of love and understanding. Question. It seems there's a technology that is being developed and has been developed that sort of represents the transition and connection that fourth density and the social memory complex will have. Are these things a result of the fact that we are in fourth density and we are sort of trying to achieve that connection by using the technology as an excuse to get there instead of our spiritual evolution? I am Quo, and I am aware of your query. We shall attempt to answer this query, for it is an interesting story. The technology that is available for the supposed movement of consciousness forward in its evolutionary pattern is much like unto the artist who draws a painting or picture that expresses the highest ideals known to the artist. The picture may be that which describes the advancing consciousness in many and varied ways, as that which is more able to grasp the nature of creation, the quality of the creator that inhabits each portion of the creation, and the place that self finds that it is moving towards within this process of evolution. Technology can take the mind and the emotions a certain distance within the process of moving into the fourth density illusion by describing various qualities that may be enhanced within the individual mind-body-spirit complex. Practice upon these techniques of realizing these qualities, of opening the heart, of expanding the point of view, of sharing service and love, of seeing the self as one with all other selves and as seeing the self as one with the Creator, for these are helpful frames of reference that may be utilized to an increasingly efficient degree by those who have the capability of mental visualizations and practice of these procedures. However, there is a certain, shall we say, limit to the effectiveness of such technology, for technology itself relies upon a limited point of view in order to be constructed and programmed to work towards the expansion of that which is limitless. That is the spirit and the mind of the seeker of truth. Therefore, in some way, such a technology may be illuminating for a time or for a certain amount of progress, but after this amount of growth has occurred, may not be able to complete the process for the seeker of truth, utilizing the technology. At that point, the seeker must rely upon his own inner reserves of inspiration and information of both the mental and the spiritual qualities that it seeks within the fourth density experience. In another 2018 reading, the questioner asks, quote, "In the past you have mentioned that after the harvest, souls will be invited to come into the planetary experience from other sources because there will be an availability of slots due to the lack of those harvested from our third density. We humans are doing a terrible job caring for our planet, but overpopulation is in part causing a strain on resources and causing damage to the planet. Are there entities overseeing the number of souls who incarnate here? And if so, is there a spiritual reason for the overpopulation right now?" Quo says, "I am Quo and am aware of your query, my sister. We thank you for this query, for it is that which bears upon a portion of our own mission. It is true that there is the likelihood that most of the population of the fourth density Earth shall be from elsewhere, for it is most likely at this time, though not a certainty, that the harvest of souls from Earth shall be small enough that a great many souls from elsewhere would be able to find their fourth density home here. Indeed, this is a process which has been ongoing for a number of your years, as you count time, for there are many who have been given the opportunity of incarnating early within your third density planes to aid the harvest to fourth density. These souls have both the third and fourth density bodies activated and are able to be, shall we say, somewhat more perceptive in their ability to blend their vibrations with those of your Mother Earth, and are able, if they so desire, within their current third density bodies to begin the healing of the planet that is so needed, as you have mentioned, because of the overpopulation and lack of information of the population concerning the planet upon which they dwell. The great number of souls at this time that are incarnated upon planet Earth is due to the, shall we say, rapid approach of the ending of the harvest period of time, so that all entities who have been upon this planet in its previous cycles of evolution are now taking advantage of the remaining years for attempting to achieve the fourth density vibration of love. This is a process which is likely to continue for some of your time, for it is most difficult to estimate in your years how long this may take. Within the overall span of fourth density itself, this is but a tiny portion of that period of time. However, relative to your experience of time, it could be some decades before this harvesting process is complete. The determination of which souls are available for incarnation in order to attempt the harvest is that which is overseen, in a sense, by entities from the confederation of planets in the service of the one Creator, such as we are. This is not, shall we say, a strict hands-on operation, but is that which is simply the observing of those entities who have placed themselves by their own progress at the door of incarnation. May we say this progress is measured by a kind of light vibration which those souls are capable of achieving harvest are able to pass by moving through the filtering light that is congruent with a certain amount of the green ray energy center being able to welcome and enjoy this light. Question: those of Quo have told us that as physical fourth density is realized, the veil of consciousness will little by little fall away, and those souls who have been groping in the dark will now find themselves standing in the light. You went on to say it is to this light, it is to the bringing forth of the conditions from the soul which allow the light to begin to shine in nooks and crannies long laying in darkness that we commend you. As someone very connected with the soil, please help me understand what is meant by bringing forth of the light from conditions of the soil. Quo says, I am Quo and am aware of your query. This is a statement which is somewhat veiled itself, which suggests that as the veil of forgetting becomes more permeable, in these last days of your planet's third density, then entities are able to see light in those darkened areas of the fertile soil of their own being, as well as the planet's being. This was a, shall we say, metaphor not meant to point directly at the dirt, shall we say, but at the fertile circumstances that are everywhere present, but frequently unused by entities who are unaware of the possibilities of growth. That is possible when the fertile conditions of one's being and the spiritual surroundings of the planet itself are utilized for the purpose of making the harvest or opening the heart, shall we say. Thus, the soil is that which has been unused within the environment of many third density entities, the environment in which they live and move and have their being. Question. Quo, many of us seem to have an understanding that the population of fourth density will be less in number than the present population of planet Earth, which if true would mean that there will be a population reduction. If that is true, what is the mechanism of the population reduction between third and fourth density? Quo says, I am Quo and am aware of your query, my brother. The process of reducing the planetary population is a further extrapolation of the information that we just shared with the one known as Fox, for as entities are continuing to age and move through the process that you call death, then there is the opportunity for either the moving forward into fourth density upon this planet or of returning for as long as is possible to the third density to continue the process of polarization. However, at some point which is imminent, though not specifically predictable, there will no longer be the opportunity to return for third density work to be processed into fourth density. Therefore, as the planet continues to be upgraded, shall we say, in fourth density vibrations, there will be less and less opportunity for third density experience to be offered to those who have not yet made the harvest. When this time comes, those then who pass through the death process will find it necessary to be placed by their etheric or form-making bodies into another third density planet, perhaps in another galaxy or position, in order to begin again a new third density cycle that will allow further processing of catalyst that will hopefully at some point allow the mind-body-spirit complex to open the green ray energy center in unconditional love that will provide the passport, shall we say, to fourth density. Question. As those ineligible for fourth density move on to other third density planets, how do those in the space-time realm of third to fourth density experience the reduction? Is there a decrease in birth rates, or is there another outer mechanism in place? And thank you so much for everything you've offered. Quo says, I am Quo and am aware of your query, my brother. The population that remains upon the planet, as a great portion of it moves through the process that you call death, or which we would call walking into the light, to have the energy centers assessed as to harvestability, will see that there is a reduction in the planetary population. Many will find reasons for such a reduction by reading their newspapers, which will have accounts of various illnesses, wars, and natural disasters that will be put forth as the reasons process for the reduction of entities upon the planet. And in many cases, this will be precisely so, for this will be the process by which many shall exit this particular planetary sphere. Thus it will seem, and in many cases be, a natural process of entities finding the end of the incarnation through the means by which all incarnations have ended throughout the 75,000-year cycle of beingness upon planet Earth. And the final question I wanted to do was about how we are all one. Could you speak again on the subject of how we are all one? Could you speak without analogies and speak to the heart of the matter of how we are all one? We are those of Quo, and we are most happy to attempt to speak upon this subject so very dear to our hearts. Let us begin with things known by this instrument from her school days. The illusion is that which is real to those upon your sphere, and this illusion is created of that which you call atoms. These atoms are treated as though there were little particles that put together become things. However, no scientist has been able to see any mass or substance when gazing at atoms or particles thereof. All that science has discovered are various fields of energy, so that the one known as Carla is a field of certain kind of energy, the one known as K just such another, and so forth. These various fields seem very real, yet scientists can explain that there is no mass involved, just an arrangement of energies. Each self-conscious person is an energy field, then, which vibrates at a certain complex of levels in a characteristic way. The metaphysical identity of each person is this complex of vibrations, which is the signature of each evolving self-conscious entity. So within your density, it is impossible to see that there is no separation between the clothes and the body and the seat and the chair and the floor, and so forth. All these things appear separate. However, in any sense beyond energy fields, there is no separation. Now within the mind, within the thinking and feeling, as the mind gazes upon the creation, it thinks it sees many different things, yet there are certain entities who are able, because of great similarities between them and you, to transcend the apparent separation between them and you. And such entities have been those who have supported and strengthened you. The energies, then, that seemingly separate persons from persons are those dictated by the senses which your physical vehicles have. However, as we have pointed out, these senses sense illusion, an illusion which your scientists have penetrated. I could easily read more and more of Quo because there's so much more information. But that's just a summary of some very interesting things that I learned about the shift to fourth density, the shifting to a social memory complex. And if some of that stuff complicates you, I totally get it. I've been there and it still does a little bit. But this had some information that I didn't have before. For instance, what Jim Mccarty said about how we would create food from our own brains. Thought that was interesting. And there will be a point in time when those on the planet that are fourth density will realize that they're taking away the free will of the third density by their very power. And so it'll become a fourth density planet. And it all ends when the number of human beings on the planet is 0. That's what I got out of that. So over time, all the fourth density slowly will move to the fourth density. That sounds crazy. It's easy to be scary when you hear that. But I think these teachings are here for a reason. I'm getting these teachings and expressing them to you so that when these things start happening and we go through them, that we're aware that we're a part of this process and that everything's going to be okay. The implications of the diseases that we have of being a part of this process, meaning the COVID could be an outgrowth of our transition through fourth density, is crazy to think about. There's so many different aspects of this. The idea that we have 16 different groups of archetypal minds living on this planet. And is it a prison planet? Are we guilty of destroying other planets and karmically have locked ourselves into this planet? Well, I don't know. It's certainly possible. I don't know. And part of me is scared to find out. I don't want to distort my own journey that I'm on now, but I'm sure I'll figure it out at some point. I'd love to know what you think about it, about all this stuff. Is it complete poppycock? Is it crazy? If you want me to continue to read Quo, I will. I am sending out love to all of you who are me. I'm sending it out to you on every vibrational level, and I'm hoping that you're getting it. And I hope that this material helps you to understand this concept of shifting to the new earth if it is something that you're interested in. So thank you for sharing this with me, and it's so wonderful to have a forum to share these ideas with such incredibly cool people. And the Reality Revolution tribe is one of the coolest. All episodes of the Reality Revolution can be found at therealityrevolution.com. And welcome to the Reality Revolution. Warning, welcome to the Reality Revolution. This is not your normal book. What follows could drastically change your thoughts, beliefs, and life. Proceed with caution. I know I was born, and I know that I'll die. The in-between is mine. Eddie Vedder. The night my home team won the Super Bowl, go Broncos, someone broke into my home and shot me. Or rather, a version of them shot a version of me. I'll explain. The logistics of my story are not uncommon. It was an attempted burglary gone wrong. I heard scratching at the back door and thought it was my cat. But when I opened it, right in front of me stood a kid in a hoodie and held a gun pointed directly at me. He fired a shot. I turned and ran back into the house, called the cops, and the whole thing ended with a bullet bouncing off my back. I'm lucky to be alive. I'm your host, Brian Scott.